We are 6 months removed from the release of CS2, and in that time it feels like the winds of change have blown through. Whilst veterans of the game have proven that they still have the chops to hang at the highest level, a new generation of talent have tunneled through to the top, hoping to be the kings of the mountain. With multiple examples of young blood succeeding through lower divisions to promote to the top flight, it's not a shock to anyone that some of these talents will stick. Academy teams, for example, exploded in popularity when Tier 1 organizations started fielding squads for a dedicated Academy league, and found returns in the players that were given a Tier 1 spot, or the more successful projects directly living on to this day. Players like Munacy have enjoyed a Tier 1 career since leaving Na'Vi Jr., and more extreme examples like Mao's swept in to take their entire Academy squad up to the first team. Certainly an answer to lacking results that would be ill-advised in normal circumstances, which is why it's awfully curious that that happened twice. Whilst Academy teams are usually a Tier 1 org's endeavour, one traditionally Tier 2 organisation rebuilt their foundation off the back of the online era. And then when their place in the top brass was challenged, they too called upon their Academy team and did the unthinkable, stunning even the most jaded of veterans and earning the respect of all. This is the incredible rise of Team Spirit and how it happened. Talking about Team Spirit can refer to two different things: the squad as it exists now, or the organisation that has existed in multiple forms down the years. The latter is important to understand how we got here in the first place. Founded as a Dota team in 2015, Team Spirit is a CIS-based organisation with all of their teams coming from this region. Recent successes have blurred the line as to where they stand in relation to the grand scale of esports, and with all due respect and credit, their history still speaks to one thing: they are a Tier 2 org through and through, but one that commands respect. Their founding roster at the time was comprised of established talents with decent potential to grow. For 3 years, they'd persist in keeping up with the Tier 2 scene, establishing themselves as a top team in the division by attending every single CIS minor and qualifying for several majors as a result. But outside of these appearances, high-level success was not forthcoming for Spirit. As the years went on, the aging squad began toying with other pieces, some veteran like Starix, other newer like current Virtus Pro player Mir. But it was in 2019 where Spirit would add the two key pieces that have stood the test of time. IGL Chopper had previous experience playing for Vega Squadron, who had some notoriety and surprising upsets. Most famously, he crushed Ninjas in Pyjamas in the E-League Atlanta Major qualifier, making it the first major without the legendary Swedes. Chopper's initial time with Spirit was successful in the Tier 2 landscape, with some significant appearances, particularly at the Star Series LAN finals, but going no higher than grand finals in the Tier 2 lands, Spirit would look for more in September that year. Enter Magix, who was part of a wider overhaul, but stood out for choosing the supportive roles despite being at a malleable stage in his career. At just 16 years old, he was a complete contrast to the relatively older guys who are much more well established by this point. This core overhaul had completed Spirit's first convergence, ditching the last few pieces that made up the original team and enabling them to end the year in a grand final against G2. Despite the pandemic forcing the entire circuit into the online era, Spirit would grab the bull by the horns and forge a path through the CIS scene, taking top placings in the RMRs, appearing in several S-tier tournaments and winning a number of cup titles. Their most significant achievement was at the online IEM Katowice in 2021, where Spirit would take top 4 in the shadow of eventual champions and fellow CIS breakout Gambit. However, the desire for more out of the CSGO team was rife, and Spirit started toying around with the roster quite a lot. Possibly a little too much, with even Chopper being benched for a period of time. And this whole era is a story in and of itself, but perhaps for today, they could foresee the steam running out. 2021 may have started extremely well, but Spirit quickly petered out with the RMR placing slipping down and far fewer titles and deeper runs. To their credit, they had pieces that would go on to play in Tier 1, such as Dexter and Patsy, and the squad itself qualified for the Stockholm Major, but all in all, the dominant position they found themselves in at the start of the year had all but petered out by the end. And without a Louvre or Blast partnership, lacking performances wouldn't aid them as we went back to LAN. 2022 would be the least active year in the history of the CS division, with the Tier 2 Cups mostly being left behind. Invite pivotal rankings were only propped up by good runs in the major playoffs in that year, but being played with unremarkable tournaments otherwise, this was not sustainable and something had to give. So many pieces were swapped about as Spirit fought to find a formula that worked again, but nothing ever clicked. The ESL Pro League that started 2023 showed the worst of this. Spirit finished in near last, ahead only of the worst that season had to offer. And as such, Spirit saw fit to call time on this era of their team. In the summer break, the majority of the squad had been moved on either to the bench or to other projects, and only Chopper and Magix remained. in the same spot that their superiors were in 2019, the cornerstones of Spirit's second convergence. Running parallel to all of this, Spirit had a relatively successful academy system. Their original academy squad in 2017 was branched out to a subsidiary organization, Espada. It's here, in fact, where Magix would break through, technically making him the first of Spirit's surviving academy call-ups. Names like Patsy and Dexter, among others, have come through Espada too, making the org rather impactful to the CIS Tier 1 scene today. However, in 2021, Espada was folded into a much more directly connected academy project, just in time for the rise of the academy scene. It was in July of that year that WePlay would form the Academy League, and many known names signed up to field youthful rosters with prospects for the future of Counter-Strike. While Spirit were not involved from the beginning, they were added in Season 3, giving them all of 2021 to test their roster in the Tier 2 and 3 Cups and finalise a team that would eventually rock the world of Counter-Strike. The first edition of the new Spirit Academy featured some names that would go on to spend time on Spirit's main roster, but one specific name initially flew under the radar. Zontix was added at the tender age of 15 as a rifler with raw aim presence and sheer firepower, but lacking the discipline to maintain this consistently. Being in the roster for a year-long run-up allowed that groundwork to come together, and as Spirit toyed with the lineup in preparation for their first Academy League season, they would stumble upon two other key stars near the year's end. Art Frost was the slightly older of the trio at 20, an AWPer that similarly struggled with consistency but hit highs so ridiculous it almost didn't matter. And that performance would only improve right through to the end of his tenure with the Academy team. And then 1 month later, Spirit would unearth an entry fragger more younger and more powerful than his priors. At age 14, Donk would find himself on his path to greatness, a path that would take some time for him to navigate, but one that caught many eyeballs on the way. The team took some time to come together, with the rest of the Tier 2 scene overwhelming the youngsters in their initial appearances. Despite their performances individually being sick, consistency was a major issue, and the squad had yet to become a cohesive unit. The Academy League allowed them to work on this against players that were in a similar position, and they rose to the challenge, the Spirit Academy placing no lower than top 4 in any one season, and 2 of those seasons in the finals. In spite of these successes though, they would still play second fiddle to other squads in the academy scene, but the lessons learned here produced some well-rounded players and a team that were looking greater than the sum of their extremely valuable parts. Spirit's Academy were in the wilderness after the league's final season, and whilst the first team floundered, the Academy squad thrived, dominating Tier 2 and even some Tier 1 competition. With Spirit looking for a new core in the summer, their choice was clear. Zontix, Art Frost and Donk would join with Chopper and Magix to form the new Team Spirit. Under Chopper's veteran leadership, Spirit immediately set about building upon the Academy team's momentum with top placings in the online scene to start. More would be convinced when they attended and won their first LAN together. Dunav Party might not have been the most stacked tournament, but beating Virtus Pro in the final is not a result to scoff at, and this would kickstart a run of form that all had to fear, culminating on the BetBoom Datra event at the tail end of the year. Now tested by the gatekeepers of the top level and against talent outside of their own region, Spirit would triumph above almost all tasks. With elimination of Furia and MIBR and a rematch against Virtus Pro in the best of 5 finals, they demonstrated their depth in stratbook and map pool on top of the pure talent they'd already shown off in full force. It was clear to all that this team was worthy of a chance at Tier 1 competition. And yet, true to form, Spirit wanted more. The Academy core that brought them so far was broken apart when the opportunity to add Shiro was presented. The AWPer had already superseded Spirit's previous team on Gambit, becoming the team of the online era directly by way of the Katowice trophy. This move was a no-brainer because when you can get a world champion in his prime, you take him. But for Art Frost, it's a disappointing end to what was otherwise a stellar run with his Academy teammates and org cornerstones. From the outside though, it seemed like this team was strengthened from their already stellar position, with affiliateship granted by Blast giving them access to both Premier Group stage splits and their ESL World ranking going far enough to earn an invite to IEM Katowice. The new foundations could do something truly special if they kept hitting those highs. And I think you all know how high they could hit. In the Spodek, it can't be understated how unprecedented Spirit's run was. This was the first time we were seeing this collection of players at an event of this caliber, and yet they looked like part of the furniture. Starting as they meant to go on with the perfect match against Apex, Spirit would lose only one map in their entire tournament run, that being to Na'Vi on their map pick and still scoring 11-13. They dispatched the former Ents core that made up the new Falcons and stunned FaZe into laughter as they got dismantled not just once in the groups, but a second time in the grand final. Both occasions not dropping a single game, and neither occasion giving enough to Karrigan to come up with an answer. With one of the greatest veterans in CS forced to bow before their feet, Spirit stood tall in Katowice, shedding the tears of those who fell before, and the confidence of youth proudly beating their chest, making the statement that the next generation are here. The world was left in shock, some at the team that won the whole thing, yes, but most at the ease in which they did it with. No one truly held a candle to Spirit or Dong, who in his rookie Tier 1 appearance matched a rating record set by Nico almost 7 years prior. With that star alone you can understand the buzz, but this isn't the story of one kid. Donk may have the spotlight, but without a good crew it doesn't point in your direction, and you couldn't ask for a better crew than this. The two cornerstones that have lived through thick and thin, the two new blood explosive in nature, and the world-class addition to round them all out. And now their sights are set on a different prize, the greatest prize in our game. Spirit are heading to Copenhagen and are bound for the first CS2 major. The new princes of Counter-Strike have already ascended the throne, but now a target has been painted on their backs. With the motivation of vengeance and glory, the Royal Arena is in everyone's sightline. To be the classroom where the new blood are taught a lesson in respect, or the palace for the coronation we're all keenly hoping for.